Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. Welcome to Cardiff City World, should I say. As we talk all things Cardiff City, it's 5 things we learned from yesterday's game between Millwall and Cardiff City. It was not pleasant, let's say, but we're going to discuss it, among other things. We've got a rumoured meeting to discuss. We've got players out on loan to discuss, as well as yesterday's game. Be here for about 30-40 minutes. We'll do the 5 things first, and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff after that. Just make sure we're all good. Give it a little retweet. If you can give it a share, please do. Also, if you can, make sure you subscribe to the channel. First and foremost, Cardiff City World on YouTube. Really helps us out a lot. Spread the word. Tell your Cardiff friends. Cardiff City content, 7 days a week. By the fans, for the fans. All we do is talk Cardiff City. Lots and lots of fun stuff. Lots and lots of stuff to do. It's good fun. If you'd like to get involved, of course, get in touch, and we'll find you a role. Lots of things we still need to get going. Lots of ideas to put into practice. And of course, if you haven't already, get your tickets for the next City Legends event. Presented by Ace Podcast Nation, City Legends with Willie Boland, 10th of May in the Rose and Crown in Pontypridd this time round. Only £10 for tickets. There's only a couple left. Please do join us for another cracking night. The ones with Darren Pearce, Michael Chopra, and Andy Campbell were absolutely superb nights. Really, really great stuff. Intimate for the fans, interacting with the players, getting stuff signed, asking questions. Whatever you want. It's a good night. Willie Boland on the 10th of May. Get your tickets if you haven't already. We should, fingers crossed, be announcing another one this week for around June time. If I get that news confirmed, then I will most definitely be announcing it this week. Well, fingers crossed with that. And all I can say is it's going to be a good one. And if you want to be guaranteed a ticket, the best way to do that is become a member of Ace Podcast Nation. Price of a coffee per month, and you get early access to tickets for the City Legends events then, because especially this next one, they're going to sell quick. So they're normally very reasonably priced, and it's just a cracking night. I've got to say. Really looking forward to the Willie Boland one. Cult hero. A good friend of mine as well, which always makes for a good evening because the banter be flying, as they say. But lots to discuss. Andrew's just mentioned Eli King playing well against Rangers today. That's one of the things which we're going to be discussing a bit later on. First and foremost, though, we're going to go with our 5 things we learned from yesterday's defeat to Millwall. Millwall 3, Cardiff City 1. Wow. I don't know what more we can kind of say. I try and analyze these games and talk about different stuff, and I don't want to be repeating myself, but it is very difficult to not repeat yourself when you kind of see certain issues that they're constantly there, and I thought some new issues yesterday, which is another problem, frustratingly. But we'll discuss it all now. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll come back to them a bit later on. Well, in a bit. But number 1 on my list, let's have a look. Bring my notes up. The first thing, particularly in the figure, was the first goal, but all the goals really, I thought our defensive shape was all over the place. For that first goal, I think 2, maybe 3 players kind of all go towards the ball from the back line. I think it was NG and the 2 centre-backs. It was like they all kind of follow the ball. It just goes one little touch over the top and we just opened up. That's worrying because that was a pattern. And I know, late on we're chasing the game for that 3rd goal, but that pattern of defensive shape being a bit all over the shop was there throughout the game yesterday. And that's a worry to me because our defensive shape, our shape generally has been one thing which you can say has been pretty good. particularly recently, I think our defence has been really good. But Bulut's style overall is based upon being compact, being defensively solid. And if you haven't got that, that's a bit of an issue. And I thought defensively our shape was all over the place. Thought Halworth had a bit of an off game as well. He got beat at his near post, but he's been very good. So I think you're struggling to really. No, I haven't talked about the meeting in London yet, mate. We're going to do the 5 things first, which we are on the first one. So look, for me, that was a bit of a worry to see the defensive shape so out of sync because it's been so good. Maybe it's just an off day. Maybe it's the second half of chasing the game a bit. But the first goal was schoolboy stuff, which is a problem. And then another thing I noticed is it's like in that midfield. So I don't include the striker, the central striker, and the number 10 in this. But the midfield and the wingers I do include because they have a defensive role to play. So number 2, Psyopis, the only one who's sprinting to get back. So when the play breaks down and Millwall had a transition on us, numerous times, Psyopis is the only one who's flat out sprinting to get back in. The others are kind of jogging, if that in some cases. And I think if you're going to play a style of possession football, which is reliant on transitions, both in going forward and in kind of defending, your midfield too and your wingers, they have to get back into position really quickly if you lose the ball. And that was kind of, I don't know if I'd say it was worrying, but it was obvious to see. Psyopis is busting a get to get back. Everyone else is jogging or walking in one case. But look, you can say, I think, in Grant's case, for instance, he's normally defensively pretty sound. Joe Rawls is the captain. He's always going to work hard. But for me, in Joe Rawls' case, look, I think I'm a big fan of what Joe Rawls is capable of doing on the ball. I think he's in the latter part of his career, it's fair to say. And I think he still offers enough that I would, I'm not saying get rid of him or anything like that. Absolutely not. He's the club captain and he knows what the club's about, etc., etc. He's very good on the ball. We looked lost without him many times. But I think you've got to be realistic. If we're going to, whether it's under Bulut or someone else, if you're going to take this club forward and this team forward, there's certain conversations which have to be had. Now, I don't think that Joe Rawls can play week in, week out in a midfield too. And for some games, he'll be appropriate. For some situations, he'll be appropriate and he'll be a good squad player to have. Someone who can come off the bench and shore things up. Someone who can settle down young players. Someone who can look after the ball and is good on the ball. But I think if you really want to take this team on, we have to start seeing Psyopis and Turnbull as a 2 from the start. I was pleased to see that Turnbull came on in that position again because I've been very frustrated since he's come in January up until the last 2 games. He's constantly played in a number 10 and he's receiving the ball with his back to goal a lot of the time, and that's not his game. That's not where you're going to get the best out of him. That's not where you can see what you can do on the ball. I also think he's a bit more aggressive. He's got a bit more legs and energy than maybe Joe's got these days. So I think, most of all, we have to sort of number 3, I guess, we'll say, and I'll kind of move this on, from the Psyopis being the only one to sprint. Our play in possession was so slow and laboured, and there's a severe lack of movement because, well, there's 2 ways. It's like 2 sides of a coin, right? So on one side is the lack of movement because they never get the ball when they make the run, because you haven't got the right players in the right positions to progress the ball and play through the lines and see it. Or is the ball not coming because the runs are not being made? One of the first thing you're taught as a forward player, as a kid, is you just keep making the runs. You've got to be there. You can not come to you nine times, but on that 10th time, if you don't make the run, the ball will come and it'll bounce where you've been making the runs. So for me, the lack of movement, the wingers, the striker, particularly that sort of three, has got to be better. But we've also got to have a player alongside Siopis capable of doing that. So it has to be Wolves or Turnbull. I would prefer it if it was Turnbull personally, more often than not, with Wolves coming off the bench. This inverted wingers, I think it's got to be binned. I said in my preview, I don't. If they're going to start, he's going to go with Bowler on the right, Grant on the left. Fine, that's what he's going to do. But I want to see him switching sides. It's got to be a bit more fluid, because I still say that if we had out-and-out wingers, we'd have created so much more chances, so many more chances, just simply from having like Josh Bowler is, he's direct, he's quick, he's skillful, he's not particularly consistent. But is he not consistent because of where he plays as like an inside forward? If he was hugging the touchline on the left and being direct, and maybe cheating a little bit with his tracking back and stuff like that, you can get more out of him. But we just never see it. And those narrow wingers and the inverted wingers, it causes so many issues for the team. And all right, in order for inverted wingers to work, you have to have like marauding fullbacks who are going to overlap and go beyond those inverted wingers. And we don't have that at this moment in time. So something's got to change. And that kind of takes me on to number 4, really, is that, as I mentioned in my preview and my comments last week, like I am almost still on like the Bullet train. I still think that he can be the right man to take Cardiff City forward, to rebuild this team, to do something with this team. And I think a big part of that will be allowing him to get players that are that he wants there, that have the right attitude and right mentality, but also the right skill sets to play in the way he wants to play. And I think you might see better football because of that. But I also absolutely do not accept that we don't have players at the club now who, 1, can play the way he wants to play, 2, can press, and 3, can be a bit more aggressive and creative going forward. It needs to be round pegs in round holes. And you have to want it. You have to be able. You have to have options. You have to be brave and want the football. And sometimes I feel like some of these players are hiding. They don't want the ball. They're not brave. They're not saying, "Give me the ball. I'll make something happen." Bar maybe 1 or 2 players. And I think that's going to be as we stand. Like, we're going to talk about this meeting. We don't really have too many details from it, but it's a meeting which was rumoured to be held last night about his future. Being honest, if you're an owner like Vincent Tan, who probably dips in and out, watches the odd game, doesn't watch every game or every minute of every game, watches highlights, things like this, gets his information secondhand. Like, what are you? If you're looking at that, I can't imagine that you're being particularly excited by the football that's being played. And that, to me, is my issue with Bullet, is that not that he hasn't done a good job. I think he's done what he's supposed to have done, which is kind of start to rebuild the side, solidify us in the Championship, make sure we're not in a relegation battle, top half finished. Like, he's done all that, and we're safe. So we should be able to let loose a little bit now and play a bit of football. And I feel like his stubbornness might be what costs him in the end, because I still think if you give him his players and you let him bring in players that he thinks can play in his system, that you might see a slightly more aggressive style of play, still possession based. But I think at the start of the season we were pressing, we had movement off the ball, and yes, you had Ramsey playing week in, week out. But I mean, even when if Ramsey had been playing all season, the lack of movement and everything that's there, he wouldn't have been able to do anything in the way we're playing, because everything's so slow, everything's so laboured. The wingers are cutting into the space which the number 10 wants to take up. And I just think the second half yesterday, I agree with what Jamie's just said there, was like, I thought it was the worst performance. That and Swansea were the two worst performances of the season. And that's worrying because you're supposed to be a team which is playing with no pressure now. There's no relegation threat. We're not going to get in the playoffs. So you should be able to play with freedom. So he should be able to implement his style similar to what we saw at the start of the season. We should be pressing. We should be popping it about a bit and showing, what we can do. Now, yes, ultimately, when the players go on the pitch, the manager can't control what those players do. But he is responsible for it. He's responsible for the personnel who are on the football pitch. Like, I don't know why Josh Bowler is still playing off the right. I understand if they think he's one of the, he's out of all the wingers we've got, he thinks that Grant and Bowler are the best options. I do get that. But it's not working for Josh Bowler on the right. Not only is it not working for him, but it's also, I think, affecting who plays in the 10. It's affecting the striker because the net ball never comes in, so they're like not moving. Perry NG's reluctant to overlap because he knows Josh Bowler's not going to cover him or come back. Whereas on the other side, whether it's Esbrand or Collins, they know Grant will, if they go beyond Grant and it breaks down, they know Grant will bust a gut to get across. They know Psyopis will come across. Whereas on the other side, they know Bowler won't. The NG knows Bowler won't get back, but he also knows that Joe Rawls hasn't got the legs that Psyopis has got to cover. And I think it's a balance and it's a personnel issue, which is the manager is responsible for, which takes me back to the original point. So whilst the manager can't be, he can't control what the players do on the pitch, he is responsible for it. But he's also, he's the one that picks those players. Okay? He's the one that keeps bringing Jeju on, who does absolutely jack shit. Looks like he's never played football before. He's the one who keeps putting, only giving Turnbull sort of 10 minutes or so in midfield at the end. Like, he's responsible for this. Number 5, and then we'll get to the other conversations. I want to talk about, like, the younger players within the squad. So I thought Ruben Colwell had another good game. Another assist, good delivery from the free kick, and Mate's got the finish. I thought Ruben looked the most likely to do anything. He works hard. He's good on, he's good on the ball. I think, so, as I've said a few times recently, I think sometimes he is let down by the attacking players around him. But I thought he was good. And then the other thing with Ruben is he doesn't seem to play 90 minutes, even if we're chasing a game. And again, it's like that thing of two-sided coin, right? Because, all right, he can't do 90 minutes. But he's never going to be able to do 90 minutes if he's constantly brought off after 60, 70 minutes, or he starts on the bench and gets 30. He's never building that fitness, that match fitness. So do you build him up now when there's nothing on it and you keep sort of building it so he's ready for next season, or do you keep it as it is, keep bringing him off? He never builds up a full tank. I don't know. It's frustrating, though, because he does look like the one who's going to create something. Gosh, he plays 74 minutes. Jeju, I don't see it at all. I thought Kean Ashford was very tidy again. I thought he, but he only had a bit of time. But I thought in both games this week, he looked sharp, looked quick, direct, nice touches, really good first touch. And I like the way that he links up with Turnbull, with Colwell. Like, they seem to have a really good understanding, and they popped it about a little bit. But we were so poor apart from those little moments. Those little moments are so far and few between in that second half that it's difficult. I've just gone through 5 things. So really that's the most positive I can be, which is mad because the second half against Birmingham, I thought we were very, very good on the ball. And I thought I said in the preview, I thought Turnbull was very good from deep. against Birmingham, even just for 10 minutes. I thought Ashford was really good off the right. I thought Colwell had a really good game, actually changed the game against Birmingham. And I really wanted to see, I thought, let's see Turnbull. And it's frustrating. Genie Parry says Jesus scored 1 goal since he's come in, and that was a bit of a sloppy one. So I'm reluctant completely to go on stats, which I'll talk about again in a minute. I do prefer the eye test, but the eye test is probably worse, because I know people were throwing that at Ruben Colwell, saying, "Oh, he's only got 1 assist all season," but he's got a couple in the last couple of games. But I think he can't assist if the strikers aren't finishing or the forwards aren't finishing, and that was that's been an issue all season. We haven't got a number 9 who can finish, and both wingers really are a bit hot and cold. I think at least with Carlin Grant, he's very consistent and he works hard, whereas Bowler's inconsistent and doesn't work hard. Obviously, Ryan Winds will come on. Yeah, it's depressing. But I really would like to see, particularly in the home games now, I'd like to see Joel Colwell getting some time. I think I'm looking at that Southampton game. If it was me, I'd probably look to be starting Ashford, whether that's through the middle. Maybe that's a bit much for him, to get his first start and play centre forward. But I'd certainly start him on the right. I would like to see Ashford start. I'd like to see Colwell, Ashford, and Ruben Colwell and Ashford with Turnbull behind. And I'd like to see if those three, with Perry and G on that right-hand side, can build up a bit of an understanding and a bit of a combination. But I also think that combination of the 3 or 4 of them would really benefit from having a striker who moves and runs in behind and does that. And we haven't got that unless you play Grant through the middle. And I'm just not sure that we've got the creativity to benefit from that. I think it's really, really fans have got to be patient with these young players, because when you're young, like Ian Ashford and Joel Colwell, and even Ruben to a lesser extent, they're young footballers, they're going to be inconsistent. You think how nervous Ian Ashford must be, these first few games playing. And to be honest with you, that's what impressed me the most. It's not necessarily what he did. What impressed me the most is when he got the ball from the very first moment he came on. His first touch was good. He looked after the ball, nothing stupid. And I was very impressed with the composure he's shown, the pace he's shown. And I think he deserves a start at home. And I think, as frustrated as the fans are, I would be amazed if any fans started giving the young players grief if they weren't up to it. And if I saw it, I would call it out immediately, because you've got to give them time. You've got to. And Joel Colwell's another one. But I've been saying probably for 3 weeks since we were pretty much safe, I've said you should have been bringing on Ashford and Joel Colwell for 15, 20 minutes here and there, or each game for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, with the eyes that the last 2 home games of the season, you're looking to start them in the both games. Because my thinking with it is to have a look at them to see if they are going to be ready, and are they ready to be part of the first team setup next year? Because it's not often you can try players in the Championship with no real pressure. So let's have a look. If we'd had a good few substitution appearances from Ashford and Joel Colwell now, and then they start, a very tough game against Southampton, a very tough game against Middlesbrough. But if they could then start those games, you've had a bit of a look at them off the bench. You've got the Rotherham game then, last game of the season. You've got more of an idea of, maybe, one of them needs a loan for 3 months just to play some first team football in League One or Belgium or whatever. And then maybe one of them's good enough, or maybe they're both good enough. Maybe they both come in and they take to it like a duck to water, and they're like, the first team football and men's football suits them. But you won't know until you try them. And now's the time to try them, when you haven't got to worry about relegation and you're not in a playoff battle. Because we do need to know if they're ready. Because if they're not, we need to bring other players in while they go off on loan. If they are ready, then we can maybe look at other positions to improve. And seems very short-term thinking, the side he's picking at the moment. So that's just my opinion. I don't know if you guys will agree. Let's have a look at some of the comments. GD Parry says, Bulut has a left wing back. Was a left wing back in his days, but then Hudson and Mental Mick couldn't seem to coach our defensive game either. Reece says, it looks like inside forwards rather than inverted wingers. Bowler's far too narrow to be considered a winger. Yeah, it's frustrating. I think it's because he knows he's playing every week regardless. So even if he has 5 bad games in a row, he still plays. Yeah, possibly. Jamie says probably the worst second half yet to be honest. Still can't understand Bowler starting. Jeju off the bench all the time. The ship is stable, but the footy is dribble every week. Savigma, apologies if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. It says, if you're Vincent Tan, surely you look at nearly nothing spent on transfers and 12 places up the league. Yeah, and I think that is a really important point, is he steadied the ship. And regardless of what you think of the football, right, we're not fighting relegation. We're not in danger, remotely. We're not that far off the playoffs. And he's done that predominantly with frees and loans. And what I keep saying to people and reminding people of is frees and loans are players that other clubs don't want. So there's always a reason for that. Maybe it's their attitude, their mentality, their quality, consistency, whatever it may be. But when you've got a side that's made up of that sort of player, it's going to be inconsistent. It's just a fact of life. So until he can bring in the players he wants on a permanent or semi-permanent basis, but they're the ones he wants, it's very difficult to judge him. And I think, as I've said before, has he got enough credit in the bank from the start of the season where we were pressing and we were playing really nice football and popping it about and beating teams and scoring goals? Is that enough credit in the bank? And then taking into account the league position, the money spent or the lack of money spent, to say, right, yeah, he is the man. Let's give him a 2-3 year contract. Let's give him as much as we can give him in terms of support and then build from there. The other thing, which I think is a big issue at Cardiff, and I think probably even in some ways a bigger issue than the manager, is there's no structure off the field. It's the manager, then it's the board, and then it's the owner. There's no football structure in between, really. And I don't know, look, with the greatest of respect, I don't know what the situation is with analysts and things like that with Bulut. But if you go back through our previews since we started Cardiff City World this season, in the preview we bring up the way the opposition play. We bring up a player to watch and some of the areas where they might cause Cardiff problems. And the amount of times that we've said they play like this is a dangerous player. If you give him time, blah, 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 he's going to cause issues. This is how they play. If you let him get on the ball or you give him time or, all these different things. And the amount of times we've talked about that in the preview, and then on the Saturday or on the game, that player has got 2 assists and a goal, or taken us apart because we've stood off him or given him room, and I'm like, right, if I can see that with my limited time to analyze and look at it and see what our opponents are doing, why haven't we got people at the club who are able to see that? And if they have seen it, why are the coaching staff and the manager ignoring it? And if they have seen it, they've told the manager and the coaches, and they've coached the players about it, and then the players have then ignored it, why are they still playing the week after? I don't understand it. It frustrates me immensely, because if I can see it and other fans can see it, why can't the club see it? So I would like to see a football structure brought in to support the manager, whoever the manager is. We need football people in the football club, funnily enough. Shocking, I know. We're going to talk about this meeting which was going on last night. So there was talk of a meeting last night in London. The manager, the owner, the chairman, some people there to discuss Bulut's future. Now, I haven't heard anything since last night, and I haven't seen anything or read anything to say one way or the other. I think there's almost like a bit of a split in the fan base. There is some fans who are frustrated with the style of play, and I think it's fair to criticise it, but I think you've got to be patient. We can't keep sacking managers after one. Knock your glasses off. Can't keep sacking managers just 1 year, sack, change manager. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. But equally, if it's the wrong person for whatever reason, and I don't necessarily just mean Bulut, I mean overall, if you've got the wrong manager and you know it's the wrong manager and you know it's the wrong person, then you do have to move them on. I think possession football doesn't have to be boring. In fact, it can be some of the most exciting football you can play. When you're popping it about the move, but it requires high fitness levels. It requires press out of possession, and it requires discipline. But it also requires a lot of movement off the ball. It requires footballers who want to take the football under pressure and then capable of using it under pressure, progressing the ball through the lines, progressing and playing through a press. And if you haven't got players who are capable of doing that, you end up with sideways, backwards, which is boring and soul destroying. So why were we capable of doing it at the start of the season and we're not, don't seem to be capable of it now? Why have we changed from pressing to just a non-existent press where we let teams walk up the field till they're about 25 yards out? Very, very interesting one. And look, with this meeting, they'll make a decision. I'm sure the fans will be last to know anything as usual, and the communication will be zero as usual. But I think you've also got to be realistic, right? Let's look at it, right? If he goes, who can you realistically bring in? I know people say, well, get Cooper in, he's the best man for the job. Right, well, there's a couple of things. One, Cooper will want big wages. Two, Cooper will want a decent budget. Three, his assistant manager goes with him everywhere is Alan Tate. So I, for one, don't want Alan Tate anywhere near Cardiff City. Fuck him, with the greatest of respect. Don't want him there, and I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't want to come to Cardiff either. Supposedly, the meeting took place in London last night after the game, and maybe it's just rumours, but they're going to have the meeting at some point. And I mean, it makes sense. They've had these types of meetings in London before because Mehmet Dalman does a lot of work in London. So it makes sense that with a game in London that they'd have had this meeting. They've got to have it at some point. So who'd you bring in, right? Let's say Cooper's off the table, which in my opinion, he is, but maybe I'm wrong. As Reece just said there in the comments, Cooper walked away from Swansea because they wouldn't back him. So why would he even consider coming to a club which hasn't got the finances to back him at the moment? He'd also want a good wage. Like, he's done a tremendous job at Nottingham Forest. Why would he's got a stellar reputation as a manager. If he was to come to a club like Cardiff, he'd want a lot of wages, he'd want money, and he'd want full control of everything as well. So I don't think it's realistic. Who else is there? Like, are we going to go back to dinosaurs? Your McCarthy's, your Nigel Pearsons. I don't want to see that type of football any more than I want to see sideways, backwards. I really don't want to go back to like the kind of poor, like lumping it up forwards. Hopefully, like I don't want to see that. Nathan Jones maybe is an option, I think, but as that ship sailed, like I know he did a tremendous job at Luton both times. I believe he's at Charlton. It obviously did not go well for him at Southampton. Southampton, regardless of what went on with owners and things like that, structurally, in terms of the football side of things, Southampton have got as good a structure as most clubs around, and he wasn't able to get it to work there. So, I am not 100% familiar with. I should have looked really how he's doing with with Charlton. I know at one point he was on like a bit of a winless streak and they weren't doing too well. So, obviously, at the end of the day, right, whoever the manager is, whether it's Bulut, Nathan Jones, anyone, right, they could have done absolute dog shit before, but they could come into a new club and they could do amazing because it's the right time, the right fit, the right squad, like everything just comes into place. So just because it hasn't worked somewhere else doesn't mean that it won't work at Cardiff and vice versa. It's just one of those things. Outside of like, I know, people can say managers, and I'm sure other people, like I was speaking to GD Parry earlier on Facebook, like I've heard from multiple people that Vincent Tan wants Steve Morrison back. But like we still don't know why Steve Morrison was sacked. And this is the problem with this football club, is they don't communicate with the fans. And it's interesting. I might have my timings and my numbers wrong, but I'm pretty sure, relatively sure, and I haven't looked, so I'm doing this off my memory, and my memory is notoriously bad. But I think, as I said to GD Parry earlier, I think that Mehmet Dalman hasn't come back on Ace Podcast Nation, which he did every year. Like once a year, he'd come on and do a live show and chat to the fans and answer questions and whatnot. I'm pretty sure he hasn't come on since Steve Morrison was sacked, because he obviously would have been asked about it and the reasons why, I think, but I'm not sure. So, and I'm always trying to get, working to get him on. I always trying to get him on. That's by the by, and I still am. Let's have a look at go back to some of these comments. Where were we? Just GD Parry said Jeju scored 1 goal since coming in, and that was a sloppy one. Jamie Edwards says, I think Kean Ashford is great, but let's be honest, he'll be under 21 again next year and not get a chance. It's such a frustrating club in terms of bringing our own through. Yeah, I mean, I do not understand why we're not playing him and Ashford and Joel Colwell, even just for 10 minutes, 15 minutes now. And Ollie Tanner, by the way. Like, I think Ollie Tanner should be starting. He should have starting a couple of games ago, and we should have said to him, you're going to start every game for the rest of the season. You might not play the whole game, but you are going to start every game. Go show us why you should be in the team next year. And if he's not good enough, then we either loan him or sell him in the summer. Then with Ashford and Joel Colwell, you give him 15, 20 minutes for the few games, and then start him in the last 2 home games of the season and see if they're ready. Because sometimes young players just take to first team football. They're good enough, and it suits them, and they just flourish. Look at Kobe Mainoo. Like, he's got 20 games at first team for Manchester United. He's in the England squad, and he looks like he's been playing for several seasons. Sometimes players just take to it. Sometimes they struggle a bit with it. It's kind of one of them, you don't know until you look. And the age-old adage, and me and Rhodri talk about it all the time, if you're old enough, you're good enough. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are. If you're good enough, you're good enough. But I would like to see if they're good enough. There's no excuse to not be having a closer look at these players in match situations in the Championship. Because let's be honest, right? They could start in pre-season friendlies, look amazing, but that's not the same as playing in the Championship, especially in the Championship run-in when teams that you're playing against are fighting for promotion and relegation. Like, that's a real test. And as long as the fans stick with them and patient with these young players, you can have a real good look at them without too much pressure on them. At the end of the day, if they're good enough and they're going to play, they're going to be under pressure. So you need to have a look at them. And everything I've seen of Kean Ashford in the 21s and his 2 little cameos this week absolutely deserves a start, because he offers more than Bowler does. And from what I've seen, he's a bit more consistent. I know that's probably a bit hyperbolic because he's only seen him in 2 little cameos, but I mean, he's going to work for the badge. He cares. He wants to impress. Why would you not start him? Why would you not play him? GD Parry says, we are no class, United class of 92 for sure, but we do have raw talent. our senior players need to perform and help them out. Yeah, and look, we've got some experienced footballers, right? I said the other day, if you're going to play Joel Colwell as the 2, I do think you need to give him either Turnbull or Rawls with him. And that it doesn't necessarily suit, although I have heard that Joel's very aggressive and whatnot. But I think it would be unfair. I'm not sure how much English Psyopa speaks. And I think you do need someone who can keep talking to him through the game, because he's young. And midfield is a whole different ball game to, playing wide, because you can play. Keane Ashford might be a centre forward going forward, into his career, but you can start him wide in his early part of his career and let him bed himself in. Joel Colwell's number 8, supposedly his best position. Like that in the Championship is brutal, but he might be, like, everything I've heard about Joel Colwell and seen little bits, like, he's a special player. He's rated by teams and under-23 systems away from Cardiff. Like, he's really, really highly rated by other people. Just give him a chance. What are we going to learn about Joe Rawls, or what are we going to learn about Ryan Wintle that we don't already know? All right, if you're going to play Turnbull in there alongside Psyopis with the view to them being the pair next year, I could understand that. That's building for next year. So I get the logic behind that, because you're going to learn something. And then bring Joel on with like 15 minutes to go with Rawls, maybe. I don't know. It's like, it just makes no sense. Don't understand it. See if these players are good enough. Let's see if they're ready. Reece says Cooper walked away from Swansea. They wouldn't want him back. Why would he even... because they wouldn't back him, sorry. Why would he even consider sitting down with a club that wouldn't back anyone in charge? We'll probably bring in someone over 60, plays dinosaur football like Nigel Pearson. GD Parry says Ross Martin jumped ship too, and the Jack bastards are suing him. All bonkers down there, yeah. Nathan Jones at Charlton, yeah. CCFC says Nathan Jones. So I think Nathan Jones is probably the best shout if Bulut is going to go. Reece says, let's face it, the club will get the wrong manager in and we'll be in a relegation battle, and all those saying it's the worst football will be moaning at the club again. Right, so, and this is going back to my point, right, about the football structure, having a football structure and why it's so important. Every man and his dog, right, knows that Bulut's contract is up at the end of this season. The fans, the club, everybody knows, right? And everybody knows he hasn't signed a new contract. So, if I work for, right, say I'm the technical director at Cardiff City, director of football, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm looking and I'm like, right, the manager may be leaving in the summer. So I'm going to go and find a list of 5. I'm going to whittle down a list of managers, loads of managers. I'm going to whittle it down to about 5, 6 managers. I'm going to know their style of play, what sort of budget they want, speak to some people who've worked with them before, who's the coaching staff, get as much information and a profile on those 5 or 6 managers, so that then, if it comes down to it, the day the decision is made that Bulut is going, if he was going, you go, right, you contact all 5, 6 of these managers on your shortlist and you say, would you be willing to come in for an interview, or can you do an interview over Zoom, and you find out what would you do with the players in our squad? What would you do with Ruben Colwell, Joel Colwell, blah, blah, blah. How would you play? What would you do with the squad as it is? How would you work it on a budget? And you would be super proactive. You'd be ready. But then we should have done that in January with Kiefer Moore. We should have been speaking to Kiefer Moore off the record before Christmas. And then as soon as the embargo was lifted, you get all the paperwork and the official side of it done. And we did it. We let it go on and on and on and on, and eventually it goes to Ipswich. Story as old as town. We won't make a decision until we make a decision. When we make a decision, then we'll go, right, what manager should we go for then? We've done it every time we sack a manager. We sacked Namucci when everyone expected him to get a new deal. Did we have any idea who we wanted at that time? No. There's no cohesiveness off the field from the playing squad up to the owner. There's no cohesiveness. There's no structure and football people. Now, like, all right, I'll put this question to you. What I just said there about they should have a short list of people just in case he leaves, whether they get rid of him or he leaves. Like, am I being unrealistic to do that? To expect someone within the club to have done that? I don't think I am, but I would like to hear from you guys in the comments. You tell me, like, is that unrealistic? I think that is being professional. It's just my point, no. GD Parry says, as you said earlier, Tam wants Morrison. So what was the point in sacking him, going through 2 other managers and caretakers since then? CCFC says, personally, Bulut needs a new contract and a chance to bring in more players. We need stability. Yeah, I tend to agree. You guys tell me what you think. Matthew Angel, what would your opinion on Bulut staying or going change if we lose the last 3 games? Do you think the board have already made a decision? Well, do you know what, Matt, right? If he plays the same sort of team that he's playing, he plays Bowler on the right, and he plays Rawls, and he plays Siopis, and he plays Mate through the middle, and he plays the same team that he's played most of the time, and we lose all 3 games of the season, I think I would probably be like, yeah, I'm not sure you're the right man for the job. If we lose all 3 games, but he's playing Ashford and Joel Colwell, and he's brought in a couple of other youngsters, and he's trying different things, and we're really like attacking, and we lose 4-3, and we're playing youth, and we're really aggressive. So like the performance, the mentality and the urgency, the youth and the performances are there, but we lose the game, then I'd say no, because he's looking at that for the future. The results don't matter. That's what we want to be doing. We want to be looking at these players in a championship scenario to see if they're ready for next year. That's just me. I don't know. Maybe other people would disagree with that. I would absolutely sacrifice losing the next 3 games if I saw an improvement in mentality, tactics, selection, urgency, work rate, etc. Youth players playing, certain youth players, not just chucking all of them in. Paul Williams says, great FSI, good honest comments. You said everything except Rawls is the problem. You touched on it more. People are seeing every week that Rawls is the weakest link, guaranteed. So I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, mate, that Rawls is the problem. Well, I did say earlier, like, what with Rawls, right? Rawls is not, for me, if we're going to go forward and take this team forward and this club forward and this squad forward and move towards what we're going to do, I don't think Joe Rawls can be starting every week. What I think he can be a very good tool for is coming off the bench when we need to keep hold of the ball, coming off the bench if you've got a Joel Colwell playing and you want to like have someone experienced to talk them through it, or if you need to put on an extra midfielder to be a bit more, you're 1-0 up and you've got to try and make it very difficult to break down. He can do that. He can keep hold of the ball. He's got a bit of vision on him. And then you can also start him in the odd game, because I think we do struggle without him from a passing point of view to get the ball to the likes of Colwell and the wingers. But I think Turnbull is very, very much capable of that and actually better at it, because what he does is he'll play it into Colwell and then follow it to get the ball back. Or he'll play it into Ashford and follow it to get the ball back. And he makes runs beyond that front line from deep. Turnbull looks a different kettle of fish when he's playing with the ball in front of him instead of his back to goal. Reese says, here's a question. Bulut and Ollie, both Dalman's only choices, and Tan hated both. Does he trust him to pick someone again, or will he now take full control of the choice of the next manager? I mean, that's a really good question, because when you've got someone who owns the football club who clearly does not understand football, the history of the club, what the fans want, like there's a big disconnect between the owner and the fans. He doesn't understand what we're looking for. He doesn't understand what Cardiff City need as a football side. Like, he might understand business and the rest of it, but he doesn't. I don't think he understands what Cardiff City need as a football team on the pitch. So the problem is he's taking advice from his board and his advisors. Do any of them understand football? I've been on record a few times as saying I think Mehmet Dalman can be really good for Cardiff City as a businessman and that side of things. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's a football guy. Like, we need, as I've said already, and I don't want to repeat my same points, we need a football structure. We need either to improve the analysts, give them more tools and abilities, or we need to bring some in if we haven't got any. Fucking hell, I'll do it for half the price. Probably do a better job. So in answer to your question, mate, I think Vincent Tan will do whatever the fuck Vincent Tan wants to do, mate, is what it comes down to. And what it comes down to, mate, right, is Bulut could be playing attacking football, he could be blood in youth, and he could just miss out on the playoffs, and Vincent Tan could not like him because he spoke out in January about not being backed. And we still would end up with a different manager. Ultimately, he's going to do whatever the fuck he wants, and doesn't really care what we think, doesn't really probably deep down care ultimately what Mehmet Dalman and the rest of them think. He'll do what he wants to do. Do you think, so I'll ask this question to you, quick, like there's 250 odd people watching now, right? Just a yes or a no. Would you keep Bulut? Go. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, just put yes or no, Y or N. Yes or no, would you keep Bulut if the decision was yours? GD Parry says other clubs usually replace managers within a week, will drag it out and not give the next one time to build. Well, other clubs, mate, normally have a list or a potential if they sack a manager, it's because they want to bring someone else in. We won't even think about it until after he's gone. And am I being, like, I'll ask the question again just in case people missed it. What I said about the structure and about having a short list of managers now in case he goes, like, is that unrealistic? Like, do you think that? I just don't know. I think it's common sense and it's professional to me. Few yeses flying in there. So, like, there are people who still think that Bulut's the man, that's interesting to me because social media is a bit of a bubble. And actually, sometimes when you speak, the fans, which I always judge as the heartbeat of the club, is the away fans for me. The ones who travel all around the country following. Not to say people who don't go or social media fans or the rest of it aren't real fans or anything like that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the away fans, those hardcore fans, they're normally, I think, what the consensus is, generally speaking. A few yeses coming in there. Interesting. Pauses. Great show, mate. Your views are from a true Cardiff fan. Good luck at your YouTube videos. But out for me. Yeah, fair enough, mate. I understand. I do really I understand. Like, I've been on the Cardiff City phone in last couple of weeks on Monday on Cardiff City World at 6:00 with Steve and the boys, and I most of them are kind of like they've had enough of the lack of creativity and the lack of passion and the sideways football. I understand it, but I've seen little bits that give me a bit of encouragement. But the thing which is killing him for me, and this is only my personal opinion, the thing which is killing it for me is the stubbornness and the refusal to do certain things and not change certain things, because that is his responsibility. Like, and if I can see it and other people can see it as fans, why can't he see it? That's what's frustrating to me. Why are we one of the only clubs in the land who don't have the wingers switch sides if it's not working? Why are that? Like, most teams who play a 4-2-3-1, the three behind that striker will be fluid, or the two wingers and the striker will be fluid, and they will all interchange and switch throughout the game to make it difficult for the defence to settle in and get used to what's happening. So if you've got a bowler on the right and he keeps cutting in, then you switch him to Grant, who's going to go down the outside. the fullback is not just constantly doing the same movements. And it makes a difference, massive difference. Reese says, it's a very poor squad. Look at what he's done with it. They're a very rigid bunch, so he can't play expansive football with what he has. There's a serious lack of pace and mobility. I slightly disagree with that, but I do get what you mean. There's enough problems within the team squads that it's difficult to play really expansive football. But I think you could argue, and I'm sure Josh Bowler, if he was sat here, would argue the reason he's inconsistent, and why Grant would say, well, the reason I haven't scored is because we don't create, and it's because the football that we're playing doesn't suit the players that we've got. Possibly. I've said many a time, I think Ruben Corwell has had a really good season this year, but I think he's been let down by the players around him in the forward areas sometimes. Jeff De La Cruz says, we also have Isaac Davis, Eli King back next season, so that will take some pressure off Bulut if he stays. His big problem will be replacing NG, who looks certain to go. I'm sure Tete will come good. Now that's interesting. Jeff said he's also too conflicted to vote on Bulut. I want to talk about the loan players just before we go. Actually, we got so embroiled in the meeting thing that we didn't get round to the loan players. I do just want to talk about them very quickly. Bulut's been wrong in speaking out to the media at times, especially in January window, but maybe that's the only way the board will take notice of him. Possibly. Right, on the loan players. So I don't like judging. I don't like talking too much about players' performances if I haven't had a good look at it. I don't like just basing it on the stats. However, if you look at Eli King's stats today versus Rangers, and from what I've heard from other people, he had a really good game today. So I'm just going to have a look at Eli King's stats. But from what I've heard, Eli King is doing really well up in Scotland, having a decent season. Definitely worth having a look at next year. Can play a range of positions, can play like left side of midfield, can play central mid, can play as a 6. Let's have a look at his stats for this year. Yeah, look, Eli King, for me, you've got to have a look at him in in the summer, simply because by all accounts, and I'm going to be limited in my praise for him because I haven't seen a lot of it firsthand. So I'm basing it on other people telling me and kind of like the stats and things like that. So it's difficult for me to really go all out and say, yes, definitely he's an option. But I would like to see him given a chance in pre-season. So let's have a look. His stats. What are we today? What's the date today? 6th. Is it 6th? No, 14th. The 4th. So he looks like he starts most games. Plays 90 minutes, quite a lot. I think I'd definitely have a look at him. Joel Bagan, and again, doing this without looking and without having a real good study, which we're going to do a video assessing the whole first team squad and the loans over the next couple of weeks. Myself and the Flower Hour boys, we're going to record it in the studio, and we're going to go through each player, rate them out of 10, rate their performances, say whether we keep loan, etc. And then we're also going to have a look at the loan players' performances. Eli King, I want to have a look at definitely in the preseason. I need him to start and play as many minutes in preseason as possible so that we can have a real good look to see if he's, if the manager can have a real good look to see if he's able to come and be an asset in the first team. By all accounts, I've heard he's having a very good time up in Scotland. Joel Bagan. Right. Joel Bagan, from what I've seen, was injured for 9 games has been then sent off a couple of times, been suspended. Doesn't seem to play week in, week out. It seems to be on the bench or sometimes not even in the squad. Again, saying without having watched his performances physically, that's a problem for me. And if he can't get in a Belgian second tier side, then he's probably not going to be good enough for a championship side. Jamalu Collins has really stepped up again following his injury this season. I think he's been really good. And I would like to see Esperan Wilson come back next year to fight it out for left back. So I'm going to have a proper look at it, but just off the top of my head tonight, I would probably say Joel Bagan, no. Same with Ojo, seems to be on the bench most of the time in Belgium. I have heard though that he has bulked up a little bit and looks physically stronger and a bit more confident. I wouldn't be against having a look at him in pre-season. There's clearly ability there. You don't come through Liverpool's academy if you're shite. But you also, he did look great for us. He's made 25 appearances, scored a goal. Isaac Davis, 100% needs to be in the squad in pre-season. He needs to play with the first team players and see what he's like. We need to play him through the middle with the first team players and give him a good chance and see if he's up to that standard. And that's if we're able to keep him, by the way, because he's been linked with Anderlecht and Monaco. So that'll be interesting. And then lastly, the last thing I'll sort of say really is please, 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 for the love of God, sort the football structure out with the football club. Let's have a look at Joel Colwell and Keane Ashford and let's build for next season. Let's get behind the club. Monday, Cardiff City phone in tomorrow night. Tuesday, we'll have something, Flower Hour. We'll have previews. We've got analysis. We'll have all sorts of podcasts and stuff. I'm recording a podcast with Paul Abandato this week. So if you've got any questions that you'd like me to ask him, drop them in the comments section, not in the live chat of this video, and I'll come to it before I speak to him on Wednesday. Got a Rhodri Giggs full podcast dropping as well soon. Not sure if it's going on Ace Podcast Nation and clips on Cardiff City World or the other way around. But Oliver Denham is another one. We'll do a video on the loan players and we'll have a real good look and an assessment of them. Guys, I have to go because I've got to go pick my son. It's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate all sort of 300 of you who's been watching. I appreciate all the comments. Please do make sure you're subscribed to Cardiff City World on YouTube. Cardiff City content 7 days a week by fans, for fans. And if you haven't got your tickets, Ace Podcast Nation presents Cardiff City Legends, 10th of May, with cult hero Willie Boland. Only £10, but there is only a couple left. So if you're going to join us, contact Snowyinsole. Emails in the comments, in the description of the episode, and it's going across your screen right now. Contact Snowy and get your tickets. There's only a few left. Not many at all. But it'd be great to see you. If you'd like to get involved in the channel, if you're a City fan and you want to get involved, please do let us know. It's growing all the time. We're getting there. It's been fun. It's always fun. In a bit.